There's a specific type of person who, when something breaks, doesn't panic. They get quiet, they look at it, and then they figure it out. The world calls them handy, capable, a natural. But here's what nobody talks about. That ability didn't come from talent. It came from somewhere much more specific than that. You know this person. Maybe you are this person. They're the one at the family gathering who disappears when the sink starts making that noise and reappears 20 minutes later, having fixed it with a paperclip and something they found under the cabinet. They learned to change their own brakes at 19 because a mechanic quoted them something they couldn't afford. They own 3 different kinds of tape. They have watched exactly one YouTube video on something before deciding they could just do it themselves. And they were right. They don't throw things away that still have life in them. And they're deeply, quietly uncomfortable watching someone pay $200 for something they could have repaired in 40 minutes. There's a particular look they get when they hold something broken, not frustrated, almost tender, like they're already somewhere in the middle of the solution. They keep things, old tools with cracked handles, a drawer full of hardware that doesn't belong to anything current. They can't explain why they keep it, but one day, they'll need exactly that. Here's what's fascinating about where this comes from. For most people who can fix anything, the skill didn't start as a skill. It started as a response to a specific kind of environment, one where problems appeared and resources didn't. Maybe money was tight. Maybe adults were absent, emotionally or physically. Maybe the message, spoken or not, was that asking for help was a burden, that waiting was weakness, that the only reliable solution was the one you built yourself. And so they learned, not in a class, not from a manual, from necessity, and from paying very close attention to how things actually work. They took things apart to understand them. They watched the person who knew. They made mistakes that cost them something and didn't make those mistakes again. Psychologists who study what's called self-efficacy, a concept developed by Albert Bandura in the 1970s, found that the most durable form of confidence isn't the kind you're given. It's the kind you build through what he called mastery experiences. Small wins, accumulated over time, in conditions that demanded something from you. The person who can fix anything didn't become capable because they were told they were capable. They became capable because the alternative wasn't an option. That's worth sitting with. Their competence isn't a personality trait. It's a record of every time the world asked something of them and they answered. But there's something underneath the competence that the research points to, and it's not what most people assume when they look at someone like this. Before we go further, there's a question pinned in the comments that's directly connected to what we're covering here. If this is landing somewhere specific for you, go answer it. I read every single one. And if this is making you think about someone or yourself in a way you haven't before, that's exactly what this channel is here for. There's more where this came from. Here's what most people miss about this. The person who fixes everything is trusted completely. They are the one people call. They are the one who shows up with the right tool before you've finished explaining the problem. That trust is real, and they feel it, and they need it in a way they would never say out loud. But here's where it gets complicated. When you are known for fixing things, people stop asking if you're okay. They assume you are. They assume the person who solves problems doesn't have any, and the fixer, because they are wired to handle things, rarely corrects that assumption. Psychologists studying what's called the helper's high and its shadow have documented this pattern in people who build identity around competence and capability. The giving feels good. The being needed feels good. But over time, a quiet resentment can form, not at the people who ask, but at the gap between how much they carry and how rarely anyone thinks to ask them what they need. They don't usually acknowledge that gap. Acknowledging it feels like weakness, and weakness, for this type of person, was never safe. And here's the part that usually makes people go quiet for a second. The paradox at the center of this psychology is this: the more capable you become, the more invisible your needs get. Not because people don't care, because you've made it look so effortless that needing help seems inconsistent with everything you've shown them. They built a reputation for competence as a form of protection, and now the protection works so well that it keeps out the very thing they didn't know they still needed: someone who offers to help them before they ask. And if any part of that landed somewhere uncomfortable, stay with it, because the last part of this is built for exactly that feeling. It's worth naming the harder version of this honestly. Sometimes the compulsion to fix things, all things, always, isn't just skill, it's control. When the world felt uncertain, mastery over physical objects was one of the few things that could be managed. And that habit can bleed into relationships, into emotions, into the quiet belief that every problem has a solution if you just work at it hard enough, including people, including yourself. That's not a flaw, but it's worth knowing it's there. And if any of this feels bigger than a video can hold, that's a real signal worth listening to. Talking to someone who actually knows this territory is never the wrong move. The thing about people who can fix anything is that they were taught by circumstance, by necessity, by the specific shape of the childhood they had, that the world responds to effort, that broken things can be made whole, that if you understand how something works, you can bring it back. That's not just a practical skill, that's a philosophy. They became the person who doesn't wait for rescue because somewhere early on, they learned that rescue wasn't coming. So they became it, for themselves first, and then, almost automatically, for everyone around them. They are the ones who show up, quietly, with the right tool, without being asked, and then go home and fix something in their own space alone, because that's the only time it's just for them. The world calls them capable, handy, reliable. What they actually are is someone who turned a very specific kind of hardship into something that genuinely helps people every single day, without ceremony. That's not a small thing. That's not a small thing at all. If any part of this stayed with you longer than you expected, I'd be curious which part it was.